So I always give this analogy, like, you don't know if I stole your password, and that's a really bad thing. You'll know if I steal your Yubikey, but probably not until you go to use it at work. If I steal your phone during this podcast, you're going to know the second I walk out of this room, like, hey, my phone's got it.
You're tuning in to another episode of Forging the Future. And today I'm in the studio with Chad Spensky. Chad is the CEO and founder of Allthenticate. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So great that we ran into each other.
Very again, serendipitous.
In Houston, which is, we talk a lot about collisions and how those things happen. I wasn't going to go to that particular happy hour and didn't expect to see you there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But tell me a little bit about how you started on your journey. First of all, you're a Houston startup, so I think this is going to be pretty interesting.
Yep.
For other founders, especially in Houston or thinking about Houston. But before we get there, how did you really arrive in Houston yourself?
Yeah, so I've always kind of been entrepreneurially motivated. As a kid, I was selling bootleg CDs in high school and modding Xboxes, and that's kind of how I got into cybersecurity.
Okay.
And then kind of went the academic route, I don't want to say on accident, but it was like, I graduated in 2008 from undergrad, not a great year for the economy. So it was like, okay, I love computer science. I want to explore this a little bit more. So I ended up going on for a PhD for bioinformatics, not cybersecurity. Realized when I was interviewing all the professors of bioinformatics, I met a security guy randomly who became my advisor. It's like, oh my God, like there's a career in this. This is amazing. I'm in, sign me up. Like, we get to hack things for a living.
Because you used to be a hacker as a kid?
As a kid, yeah. I started in my early teens, maybe not even teen years. So I was in middle school in like 7th or 8th grade. My brother introduced me to IRC. I went way down that rabbit hole. Like, had a friend get arrested by the FBI and retired at 19.
Pretty far.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm 19. I got to back out. And then I ended up going for a PhD, specifically with the idea that became Allthenticate, actually. They had a project back then called Gray that they deployed at Carnegie Mellon and University of North Carolina, where I went, that they were unlocking doors with QR codes and like the old Nokia brick phones. And I saw that, coming out of an undergrad. I was like, this is the future. Like, this is amazing. Studied under him, ended up dropping out of my PhD because I interned at MIT Lincoln Laboratory and just...
What is Lincoln Lab? What is that?
It's a FFRDC, so they call it Federally Funded Research and Development Center, owned and operated by MIT. So it's a branch of MIT that's about 45 minutes out of the city on an Air Force base, and they do only DoD contracts.
Really?
Exclusively funded by the DoD. Their charter is they cannot compete with industry, and they will only do fundamental research effectively.
What was it like? I mean, you strike me as a pretty smart guy. Getting out there, were you similarly like, wow, I didn't know so many smart people existed, or did you feel like I'm the smartest guy in the room still?
It's a mix, actually. So the one thing that first day you have the imposter syndrome. You're at MIT, right? Like this is something I've only seen in movies. Like, I'm on campus, my badge, it says employee next to that logo. And then I've met some of the smartest, coolest people of my life there. But after about a year, when you realize you fit in, that was a surreal experience. I literally just got goosebumps. I'm like, oh my God, I've, all this hard work is starting to pay off, and I've actually gotten to a level where intellectually I understand what they're talking about and I can carry on a conversation with them. And I ended up leaving there and consulting for them during my entire PhD. I went back to finish at University of California, Santa Barbara, with actually the two professors that really got me into cybersecurity when I was exploring for bioinformatics. I guess it was 6 years before I ended up studying under them. So it was a very cool closing of the loop.
I mean, normally you wouldn't think Santa Barbara would be kind of a center for cybersecurity, right?
Yeah, it's a weird university. Most people think of it as a party school, but there's these little just really elite pockets. So my advisors there, in my opinion, are the two best in the world, and that's why I was so excited to work under them. And then you have the physics department there that has 2 or 3 Nobel laureates, and So there's like these little pocket labs that are just phenomenal. And you get to get a doctorate on a beach. So that was super cool.
Well, I similarly dropped out of my undergrad. You were considerably farther along than I was. But what was it like to then like give up the fact that you're not going to get this PhD and kind of take the red pill and dive into the startup world? I guess you said your advisors kind of encouraged you to do that.
So the first PhD I dropped out of at UNC, that was like, I think the single hardest decision of my life. Cause like, you don't want to quit, right? Like that decision to quit. Yeah. And I was doing well. So that made it even harder of a decision. Like I'd published a paper, things were going well. Like I'm really like hanging this up and moving on. And the one thing, like my one, Fabian Monroe's the one professor that really helped me through this emotionally. He's like, you can always come back. He's like, universities will always be there. Like, go explore this. He's like, but don't quit a PhD and go into another one. Like, you just went through like a mental gauntlet. He's like, go get a job and like enjoy life. Like, have weekends, have evenings, like go decompress. And then going back to finish the PhD really kind of felt like a little bit of unfinished business. And if I was going to start this company, it let me vet some of the really, really hard technical problems and kind of a safe environment where I'm not at a huge financial risk. I'm doing, fundamental research in a place you should do fundamental research.
So you dropped out twice?
No, I dropped out in North Carolina. I finished at UCSB.
You did? Okay.
So I do have a doctorate.
Oh, wow.
I started the business there and then fell in love with a chemical engineer. And that's how the journey led to Houston. So Santa Barbara, we always knew was never where we were going to headquarter. But at the time, there were a bunch of really good angel investors there. We had a nice network. Like, it's a great spot to start. We just came out of college, and I literally defended my PhD on a Thursday and started the company on a Monday. So we wouldn't be able to do that if we moved.
And what was going through your head at that point in time? Because California definitely most people think of as startup nirvana. Right. Now your girlfriend's going to Houston, and hey, that's a good reason to go, but maybe not the best choice for your startup. So your impression of Houston before you got here? Any thoughts?
I first told her no. Mm-hmm. She's like, I'm moving to Houston. I'm like, this long distance is going to suck. I'm like, well, that's a bummer. And then like thought about it more, and I'm like, and our advisor actually just had good life advice. Our company advisor, he led our angel round. He's like, Chad, follow the girl. Like at the end of the day, family matters more. It's like, good advice. Like we'll figure this out. And then after landing in Houston, I always say like I moved to Houston for love and then fell in love with Houston. Like it's awesome for startups. It's incredible. One, it's really supportive of a city. Like it's very welcoming, which was amazing. And we kind of conflicted that with California. We moved there. Everyone's like, get out of here. It's so expensive. You're driving up our rents. We moved to Pearland, and like I went and got propane for our grill, and the kid carried the other propane tank out of the car, was giving me, dinner recommendations and parks and places I can go to play basketball. So like that welcomingness has been there the whole way, which has been incredible to start a business. The cost of living, the quality of life, it's through the roof. And I was actually talking about that with my co-founder today. I'm like, if we were doing this in Silicon Valley, we'd all be living in a house together that's also our office. And, like we'd have this, and we did that in Santa Barbara. Like we lived really cheaply, for the amount of money we were paying to our quality of life. I'm like, and yet in Houston, we're complaining that like, oh, I'm on the 4th floor of a luxury apartment, not the 5th. I'm like, this is such a better way to start a company.
Kind of a best kept secret.
It's amazing.
I think that your point about like you can always go back, that's an important thing for a lot of people to realize, because that was really behind my own decision to leave IBM as a co-op. Was like, well, that door still looked open to me. If this didn't work out, I can go back and go do what I was going to do, right? And I think a lot of people think that it's like a one-way door. There are a lot of opportunities still that you can go off and try and come back to.
Exactly.
And it's kind of managed risk, right?
Yep. So. And I was almost a professor. I applied in dual to professorships while I was starting my company.
Yeah.
And I even thought about doing both. I think I would be in a casket if I tried to do both. That's insane to be an assistant.
Which two things were you
assistant professor and startup?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like my brain would have just melted down. But the interesting thing is, in my analysis, the starting this company was the one thing that there wasn't really a go back and try it later. Like there was already momentum. We had angel investors interested, and the timing was just really nice. Like I'd been working on this research for 12 years, and it kind of just hit the point where it's like people were actually having these conversations. Oh, maybe we should get rid of passwords. Maybe we should move beyond password managers. They're starting to use their smartphones for finance. Like, oh, these things are secure. I can trust them more. So,
well, I think that's part of it. I mean, one you can see, well, if I do want to take this other track of being a teacher, being a professor, that's an option and a door that's going to stay open. But all of a sudden, this other opportunity seems to be coming together. Like the timing, because timing is a lot of like success. You can have the best idea. I just finished a book called by Jerry Kaplan called Startup. That's about Go Corporation when they were creating the first pen-based computers, which they thought that was going to be a big thing back then, right? And so, all great concepts, and but the timing just didn't happen to be right.
And they interview a lot of the great leaders, and they ask them, what was so special? Like, I just got lucky with timing.
Well,
right?
there's a
right place and right time.
If someone successful says that there wasn't some piece of luck involved, then they're just either lying or oblivious to what actually happened. Then, did you start the company once you moved to Houston, or had you started it and then you moved headquarters? And
we legally incorporated it in 2019.
Where did you incorporate, by the way?
Delaware.
You did, okay. Yeah.
So we incorporated in Delaware.
Okay.
We didn't start really working on it. It's been my side gig throughout my whole career, but in July 6th, 2020 was when I defended my PhD, and then I started with me, 2 co-founders and 3 interns, and I was paying them out of my checking account. So that was really when we started the business. And then when we were moving to Houston, we were actually almost broke. We were down to, there's 3 of us left that really survived the first wave and really wanted to do this and were committed. So moved here, and then that's when we ended up getting VC funded. So the real business journey all is happening in Houston. Up to that point, we were, we had an office in Santa Barbara, but we weren't operating at the scale that we are now. It was really just proving, can this work? Can this be done? Do we love this? Do we want to keep doing this?
How did you raise money? You came to Texas and then talked to potential investors in Texas?
Yeah, so we started raising when we were in Southern California, and we had a bunch of different VCs interested. And we even had a term sheet that was kind of inbound. I was talking with them. Amplify, they did end up investing in us in our round. But we moved into our house in Texas. We have no furniture. I'm sitting on this rickety little table trying to pitch these VCs and hopefully
full startup mode.
hopefully get them interested. But I was convinced that if we were in Texas, I want our lead to be in Texas. I was like, if we're a Texas company, there's no end in sight. We plan on settling in Houston indefinitely. It's I want to be a Texas company. So we went to South by and tried to meet everybody. That was just our mission.
This was
exhausting.
A year ago or 2 years ago?
A year ago, last South by.
Okay.
And we ended up meeting Silverton Partners, S3, Live Oak. We were just relentless. I think you have to be. It's our full-time job, raise money or we die. And then we ended up just really hitting it off with Silverton. And by April, we had a term sheet signed.
So tell me a little bit about your view of cybersecurity. I think you probably have an opinion on that.
I have an opinion on that. Yeah, so it was interesting growing up on the offensive side, right? I grew up as a absolute jerk of a kid on the internet, not someone you'd want to cross. I've definitely knocked people's computers offline and, just doing silly stuff on the internet. So my opinion as a kid was this whole industry is a bunch of bozos, don't know what they're doing, right? So it was weird to then join that industry and be one of those bozos.
You traded your black hat for a white one or what?
It's probably gray. There's probably still a little mud on there. So it's white with some smudges, I think. But my thought, really why I started the company was I really feel like the industry failed society. If you look at, the products that were coming out of cybersecurity companies, most people don't like them and they're still getting hacked. And I'm like, okay, that's not a good scoreboard, right? Like one of those should be really high flying colors.
It's only gotten worse, by the way, right?
Yeah, and it's not improving. And this is like one of the things I latched onto. And my advisor, I was like, I'm going to kill the password. And he's like, that's a really hard problem. Like the battlefield is just filled with bodies, right? Of people that have tried this. And I'm like, but at least there should be one more hat in the ring, right? Like I don't want to not try. So the whole thing I've been trying to do my whole career is like, can you have usability and security? And it's hard. I mean, no doubt about it. Like we get asked this question all the time. Why hasn't someone done this yet? I'm like, I don't want to discount the technical complexity, right? Like it's so easy to sit on the outside and say like, oh, if you just did this, then it would be easy to log into computers. And it really, like the timing thing was important too. Like we want to use hardware tokens. We've known that forever. All of Europe went to smart cards a long time ago. And the smart card industry did great on the security part. And then they really just hit the wall on the usability part. So it took smartphones and trusted execution environments and secure elements and all these things that kind of come together, which really happened in the last decade. So the window for opportunity to do better wasn't there. So it's kind of a really fun time to be in the industry.
How does it work exactly? I mean, how does it authenticate? I mean, what's behind it?
So yeah, I guess that's a good question. The premise.
I've got 1,000 passwords. I'd like to get rid of some of them.
The premise of it is very similar, almost exactly the same as what smart cards did. So they put a private key on the card, and then you use that key everywhere, and it's secured in hardware. And if you want to hack it, you have to come get it. And then if you want to clone it, you got to dissolve the card in acid and all these crazy attacks. So we're like, great, if we could do that with something people want to carry, their phones. And it has a bunch of different interfaces, so you're not restricted to the smart card interface that you plug in at pay terminals. We're like, that would be amazing. So that was really where the research went to, okay, we know we can do this theoretically, but can we secure it properly? It turns out that's a yes, thanks to trusted execution environments like TrustZone. And then can we make it easy to use? And Bluetooth interfaces and all the things your phone's already connecting to made that a yes. So then our idea, the big idea really was, once we do that, you can store as many private keys as you want, link to as many things as you want, and use those instead of passwords or pins or tokens. And it's all on your phone. And you can choose the security for every individual action.
Is it like turning your phone into a Yubikey, essentially?
It is. It's very similar to that. In fact, like the Yubikey is a member of the FIDO Alliance. We're a member of the FIDO Alliance.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, we'll end up even speaking the same protocols, whereas they go over USB, we can go over USB, Bluetooth, whatever your phone has on it.
Is there a particular advantage to using your phone versus a Yubikey?
There's a couple awesome ones. One, people love their phones. So I always give this analogy, like, you don't know if I stole your password, and that's a really bad thing. You'll know if I steal your YubiKey, but probably not until you go to use it at work. If I steal your phone during this podcast, you're going to know the second I walk out of this room, like, hey, my phone's gone.
That's true. Yeah.
So that one I love. And the other one is there's incentive from the phone manufacturers to put all the cool stuff on there that you'd already want to put on there. And as a security company, we don't have to manufacture these and convince people to use them. Apple and Google have already done that. So they've solved the really hard adoption problem. And then it's just up to us to sneakily put some security in there. And then you can kind of just, accidentally solve one of the world's hardest problems.
Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to you guys solving that problem, and congrats on the funding round. That's a great milestone. You're also you moved to Houston, but you were telling me earlier this week that you're making a lot of your employees move to Houston. Is that right?
Yeah, we're 100% in-person company, and it's been interesting. Like I was like, what's the sales pitch of Houston? Like they see my enthusiasm, but when they move here, how's that going to go? And the one guy, it's his first month. He just moved here a month ago. He's like, honestly, by like day 7, I felt like a local. He's like, everyone's so nice. They're so welcoming. He's like, I just feel like I fit right in. He's like, nice. I love it. So, and like my co-founder's moving here next month. And I just got off the phone with her today. She's like, I'm so excited about moving. So it's fun that we'll all be here together in a new city together. We're a new company here, just, out meeting people and growing our business in the city. It's been really cool.
And then just being in the, I'm happy to hear that. But in the ecosystem itself, I mean, we met at the Houston Exponential Roundtable a month or so ago. We ran into each other again at a local, startup happy hour event. And maybe just a little bit about your experience in startup ecosystem here in Houston.
One, I love that we're not the one hosting the events anymore. So in Santa Barbara, we would host people in our parking lot, and it was just exhausting, but necessary. Like you just want to get together with like-minded people. So I moved here. I started out the Cannon West Houston.
Oh, yeah.
And I live in Pearland, so the drive was just too much, despite how cool that office space was. So then I moved down to the Ion. And then ultimately, once we got our funding round, we're setting up shop here. We're setting up headquarters. We need our office, like we're an Allthenticate office. And we found the Esperson through Houston Exponential folks. So Lawson really helped guide me. I don't even know how I met Lawson at this point, but just everyone.
Another collision probably.
Yeah, again, everyone's just welcoming and helpful. And it's a very collaborative ecosystem, that's been really nice. Like that it's not, we're all trying to elbow each other out and, try to get to the top first. And like, even now, we haven't made it. We're not like a unicorn, but I'm trying to pay it forward as much as possible. And every other founder I see that's going through funding, like I just went through that. Like, let's grab lunch. I can help you talk through term sheets or make intros. So it's really nice. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that give first mentality I think is really important because we are still trying to build the ecosystem here, and I super appreciate you doing that. Right? I mean, not everything has to be transactional.
Exactly.
And we need these. Well, when I started many years ago, there just weren't these places to have these collisions or be able to run into other founders or hear about how they're solving their problems. So I think that things have really come along in the last, actually, the last 4 or 5 years. But is there, do you know anything that maybe what Houston startups need to get from pre to post revenue?
I don't, we're technically post revenue, but we're still like kind of hitting that product market fit. So like, we make money. And I think we're still figuring that out ourselves as well, right? And the one thing I kind of hope Houston can offer, the potential's there. There's all these huge companies. If they kind of lean in, I know they're sponsoring places like the Ion. You see their logos everywhere in startup ecosystems. But if they kind of lean in and do pilots with you, I mean, that goes a long way.
So you're in revenue now. That means you're for sale?
We are for sale. You can go on our website, sign up, $3 a user a month, and use your phones to unlock your doors, your computers, your servers, and all your websites at work.
Allthenticate.com?
Yep.
Okay.
That was that we started the company without owning the .com, but we...
How much did you pay for the .com?
$10,000.
$10,000. It's another point I make to our startups. They're like, don't name your company over what you can buy for $7.99 on GoDaddy. I mean, sometimes you're going to be dealing with this for a while, and so $10K for something you're going to have forever is not all that bad. Maybe even more.
Yeah, we had the .net, and we got the
but
trademark, which was more important.
Yeah.
Like, we were shocked it wasn't trademarked. I'm like, the name, it says exactly what we do. We do authentication. We do all of it. Like, it's amazing. And then, the guy, I'd say we negotiated. We just paid him what he asked. He will forever be in our history, and... it is what it is. We're grateful we got the domain.
Well, it can get more expensive the more time that goes by.
That's what we were worried. Like, we don't know how good of a person he was. Is he going to wait until, our Series C and say, hey?
Well, even Tesla had this problem, right? So, I mean, it's they did eventually buy it. But, interesting problem. Yeah, so having to fundraise, 72 conversations, 3 months, 3 investors, you got your money. Now you have runway, at least for a while, right? So
we raised for 2 years, and we weren't sure what the funding environment was going to be like, what the economy was going to do, and we're still on that pace that should get us. So we're, I guess, another year approximately. Yeah,
it's a good runway, 12 to 18 months, something like that. Well, great. Well, congrats on that. Maybe any books you're reading right now? Like, okay, first of all, if I'm interested in hacking, you've got a user group, and we'll try to put that information maybe out there or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And any books you're reading right now?
The one I'm reading right now, I'm actually in love with. It's called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek.
Oh, yeah, Simon loves Simon. Yeah.
Oh, I come home so excited. I'm listening to like audiobook on my way to and from work. I feel like every night I'm like, oh my God, this chapter was amazing. It's like he articulates very well what it takes to be a good leader. And he relates it to like human biology, which is really interesting. And it's like, this is why we're like this from like, prehistoric days. And like now this is how this relates to the workplace and how to actually lead people, make sure they have fun at work and enjoy their jobs.
He's such a good speaker too.
Yeah.
Good teacher. I'm sure you appreciate that, right?
Yeah.
Leaders Eat Last. Yeah, that's a good book. Well, Chad, thanks for the interview. And, I don't know if you've been, I like crazy socks. I've got my Texas socks on today since in honor of you coming to Texas. And so I have a little something here for you, a little gift for coming on the pod.
Oh.
So here you go. Oops, they're separate.
Did you read my Christmas list?
There you go. Some binary socks.
These are epic.
Thank you. I don't know if the binary says anything, so you might have to check it. If I had made the socks, they would, because I think they should, right?
Exactly. So some steganography in the socks.
Yeah, exactly. One of the conference rooms that I named, we always named them after thinkers and Einstein and usual people, but I named one of the rooms Turing. And I put normally I'd put the quote on the wall, but in this case I just put a wall of numbers and then tried to see if anybody would figure it out. And I had one engineer actually did figure it out. So I think he's the one that's probably going to come to your hacking class. So
that's awesome.
I'd be very interested.
I actually built a Turing machine at MIT Lincoln Laboratory.
Oh, nice.
They had this. They wanted to do museum pieces around the office of really novel breakthroughs. And the one that the director really latched onto, he saw a video online of like someone that built, a Turing machine. He's like, this would be cool. So we collaborated with high school students and built the first one with like Raspberry Pi and all these parts. And it was hilarious to watch it run. And then we built a beautiful one out of polished brass with chains that drove it. It had a little camera and would do image recognition to read. To write, it had a dry erase marker that would write. And then it had a felt eraser to erase. And then our infinite tape was 1,000 feet of 35 millimeter white film.
Oh, wow.
And it was awesome.
How long did it take to build that?
It was a lot. And we did it all after hours. Like we'd finish our day job. I want to say it was like 6 months that me and a couple other guys after work every day would go down to the lab and like buying that big piece of brass that we then had to like water, water jet. They delivered it to my office when I was on a business trip, and they just dropped this like $800 or 800-pound piece of brass in the hallway. And I get this like furious call. I'm on a business trip. Like, you have to move this. Like, how do you physically move this? Like, why would they put that in the hallway? That should clearly go in like receiving.
That's funny. 800-pound piece of brass.
That was the coolest engineering thing I've ever worked on, building a Turing machine. It was so fun.
Nice. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
I'm definitely going to check out your product.